into the situation where this dude came on the internet. He was a D-list celebrity. He'd been
We
like the
whoa, ladies and
billboard,
gentlemen, we
like a
interrupt. We
convenience store clerk or some shit.
we interrupt this great premiere of me and Nechama to present a live stream of me and the Levite. Here's your savings throws, and you're gonna need them. In my head, it might even be a different guy, but isn't that the guy who showed up on Pastor Paul Vanderklay in a three-piece suit from a car? And if that's not him, that's embarrassing. But if it is, he's here live, and we're gonna do the thing. Scrolling across the bottom was the thing. Scrolling across the bottom is how I approached him for the conversation. So we're gonna try and accomplish that here today. And here's your savings throws. Remember, folks, you can choose survival, social, wisdom, or heart. Choose survivalist. That's a 2. A 2, socialist with a 19. You're going to be fine. You're good for this. Lovers of wisdom, however, that's a 3. I hope you got your bonuses. You get those from commenting and such. Heart folks with a 15. You'll be okay. You're wearing your armor. Okay. McNart with the wisdom. Hope you had your bonus, buddy. Hezzy, come on. Welcome to Larpgate Year 3.
Hello, all. What a pleasure to be here.
I saw those eyebrows with the word pleasure, sir.
It's
I
a real
did.
pleasure.
And it's potentially hostile the build up for this, but like I'm gonna have to ask Nate Heil. I think your charisma is at least 18. So you're likable. I already like you. So like despite the how terrible this whole thing is gonna be for everybody, know that I'm already affable or gregarious, whatever word you like. I'm glad to have you here. Welcome to the Metanoia Marina. Fancy visualized around us is the visualization of the Metanoia Marina provided by the AI Demon Slaves.
Thank you for having me. I always appreciate your techno art going around over there on your channel. Your channel in general is very intriguing and attracts very interesting people.
Well,
Fred,
I like to make it feel. I like it for it to feel like a place where people are allowed to glow. You know, regardless of why they're glowing or who they're glowing for, a place that they can come together and glow. And as such, I am trying to build a lobster monkey army, though. And so I want to make sure that's like not making any other agencies uncomfortable. I have watched Archer, after all.
like
But
Archer Adult Swim.
yeah, don't say those words, but yes, I didn't know back then. I didn't know. I didn't know. um, oh, we got comments. People are glad you're here. I don't know how much. This is mostly me and him, but let's a shout out to Magic and Bart and McNarth and the Red Pill with. Oh, so this is a guy that says it's a brave space. It
I'm the
attracts
guy
the
that says,
fringe.
well, it's from I have different conversations with some more and some less rabbis in Israel, prominent rabbis in Israel, and one of them I was talking to specifically about interfaith, and he mentioned to me moving from the safe space to the brave space, and I told him that like I like that and I'm going to take that, and he's like, do your thing, and I just felt it was very appropriate for this little corner. I don't know if you like using that term, but I use
I
that term.
do like that the acronym is TLC and that that's what actually holds this thing together.
Turn it
So
up and care. I hear that.
that works for me. Um, you have connections to prominent rabbis. That's nice. That's nice.
Well, Israel's a pretty small country, so like it's always a few phone calls away. And Jews in general are very connected. So in a very connected, you know, those things happen fairly quickly.
What does that mean, sir? Can you elaborate? What is this connection you speak of? Jews
Well,
are generally connected. Generally, what?
so um,
That ticker's killing me. Hold on.
something happened to something happens to, God forbid, to my son, and he needs to go get some medical attention for that. So it's always you're up to 2 or 3 phone calls away from someone who's like a head surgeon in some hospital in America or in Israel or in France. And then if it's not, if it's then there's levels of that. There's like, will he come and see me? But you have to pay for that. Will there's a whole game to be played. But that's true on sort of every level. So the school my kid's going to go to, I'm not to say that people always use that. The point would be, people always get a phone call. Do you know X? I happen to come from a very large family, so there's I don't know. There's probably 90 of us.
Large enough to be a tribe, would you say?
Yeah. Yes. I actually went last night. We were late in the game. We missed the schedule this year. But my grandfather has every Hanukkah. He has all grandchildren and great grandchildren sign this book from birth until today. So you just see the signature progressing, and he has this book. It's called the grandchild book, and he has a picture of a tree and roots, and he has this whole sermon he explains. But yeah, it's very much tribe-like. So that tribe is fairly connected. So when in need, I try to utilize those connections, but never to abuse them.
The initial premise I reached out with, I had a complete misapprehension of Nechama because of her name. So it's okay she's not here for this, or only in the whatever for this. I have to make sure. I want to check the valence of my Semitism, because I know I can't go anti, but I don't have to be pro. And so, and I want to know if my honest, heartfelt opinion is considered offensive. And who better to ask than the from you're called?
From means religious.
From, it doesn't mean you're from the homeland itself? Because
No,
that would be
it's
convenient.
FRUM. From.
Okay. Well, are you? Well, you're born and raised military, and they make everybody go through the military, right?
Yes, however, for originally in 1948, the establishment of the state, around 400 ultra-Orthodox students got exempt from the government, because the attitude was if there's not many of us and we're learning, and that's our own sort of cultural.
What do you mean exempt from the government? And
exempt from the army.
Oh, exempt from the army.
Sorry if I said government. However, that has turned into a major issue in Israel, because those 400 have grown to a massive amount, which happen to be now in political power. Putting that aside, some of the people in Israel, which are part of the national religious camp, which I guess I'm a part of that camp. We could get into the details if you want about that. But either way, they have, it's called Hesder in Hebrew, which means basically the deal, or the
Are you saying they made a deal? No way.
They made a deal. Lawyers were involved, and the deal was that basically there's the 3 years, which are the mandatory years to do army service, and then the real force is in the reserves. So then you're basically in reserves until you're around 45, right? And you have to give around 30 days a year. Okay, so
this is your way of saying you draft dodged, or
no,
were
not
exempt
at all.
from the military?
So in the religious national communities, they say like this: okay, we will give you a year and a half out of a year and 8 months. Well, now it's actually two years and.
I don't want to hear the rules, sir.
Sorry.
What happened to you? Did you go to the military or not?
Yes. I was in the military. My point is, in general, a lot of people in my camp do the full reserve service, as in until they're 45. But the actual active service when they're younger, they do around 2 years instead of 3 years. But they have to then study the Torah in a religious institution for 4 years at least.
So basically, like to the actual people playing the game,
Sorry.
It's like if you study Torah for 4 years instead, that counts as military service, which is, I believe, perfectly accurate. So, I mean, it is an equivalent. They wouldn't, if there's anybody going to balance the rules, right? Oh,
Yeah.
so let's get into like my technical, like actual beliefs that might be considered offensive. That I think that entity that Moses had the encounters with, if was not secular, was probably the alien that genetically engineered your people to rule this planet. And is that, how offensive is that? Is my question.
So, to answer you honestly, which I definitely believe in, I have long ago abstracted my religion, pretty far down. Where if Moses doesn't exist, even that doesn't really change my relationship with God personally. And I don't know if I could ask a community to hold that, but I don't necessarily think that fully negates sort of like the general relationship that one should have with a higher power. What that higher power is at some point, like if you're telling me those are the aliens, well, that's sort of the limit of my consciousness. But now, specifically to what you're asking, if that's like assuming it's a serious question, could it be that there is alien life? I think most of us today around think that that's probably true. Then how does that affect us here? So then there's like a technical question with, the distance and all that. But assuming you take that into consideration, can there be alien a playground where Earth is something they're playing around with, like Prometheus style? So then, okay, sure, you would have to then ask, like, what's their mission? Do they have a relationship with a god, or is just like consciousness evolved? But let's assume, their attitude is like we're playing around right now. Then it would be a little strange that the Jews would be like the chosen people. Not necessarily. You could be like, that's still part of the game that they're doing. I wouldn't necessarily say it's genetic, just because like it's a covenant you buy into, which say sort of like morality would be something that you're buying into. It's not if like you genetically can handle it or not.
Well, at this point, right? But like one of my serious personal questions to you is like, are there breeding age females available with King David's bloodline? So, I don't know. I mean, the genetic, whether or not it was engineered, it doesn't matter to me. But because like my whole take is like whatever entity this was. The part that makes it sound like aliens to me is when he made Moses hide in the rock and watch the glory fly by.
Okay.
That glory that whole thing sounds like a spaceship. But
and Sinai?
Might not know that one. I'm not actually well versed.
Thanks for the
finger. Thanks for the finger.
So if you're interested in a visual, there's a movie with Nicolas Cage, an apocalyptic movie that came out.
God bless Nicolas Cage.
I'm a fan. I mean, I'm a fan of Con Air, so like I'm always gonna love Nicolas Cage, But whatever the name of the movie is, Signs. That's the name of the movie, I think. Signs. And at the end, he meets the aliens, basically. But it's a play on what Ezekiel saw in the chariot and like entities with like different heads. So like if you wanted to go, but you then have to start asking like how much of that is then psychedelics potentially.
Yeah. For sure.
And even that has a correlation, because you could say like just psychedelic, which is all happening in your mind. Or is that, connecting to other entities, other realms? Is that aliens? So like, the commentary is still open to that. I know Jordan Peterson is playing around also in that playground a little.
He has seen the black sun.
Well, he did something putting on that suit recently, that blue suit he had on.
Oh, dear.
Oh, my God.
Okay, wait, hold on. Let me check the banner again. Let me run this real quick. No, wait, let me do the one with sound. let's get to the fancy end part. What is the proper regard with which God's chosen people are to be held? And what do you personally feel? What's the official line of what's the chosen for? What's chosen for what, bro?
Okay. Just trying to think how I best want to answer this. So ultimately, I think it's important to remember, it's just as far as context, that the Hebrews are chosen to be a nation among nations before there's a conversation about a religion. Okay, religion comes later on. Religion is adopted later on onto the people.
And as a nation, it's like ethnic, right?
Yes, correct. There even are ramifications to this when we come to the land, and there is a verse that basically says, and if you'd like to have a king, like you see the other nations are doing, then you could have a king. And there's a question like, why is it giving you that option? Why is it not just saying have a king? The answer is that because it could be ultimately it is flexible and malleable. It could be a monarchy, it could be a democracy. There's different versions, but ultimately we are supposed to be a political body because that is what the other nations around are, and that's how we're supposed to converse with them.
A nation among nations, or what was the actual verbiage on that?
There's not nations among nations, but I'll tell you the exact version is in English.
It's like the government version of the city on the hill, right?
City on the hill. I mean, that was what Jordan Peterson was saying. 1 second. Sorry.
I saw the suit too. That promo is a tad loud, Bart.
But ultimately, I would say that we are supposed to be a model of, it's there's a spiritual element that's tagged on, and that could transform into what we know today as religion. But those are different. Is
this what it means to you? Like,
no, I would say this is what I'm basing this off of.
There's this old show that I grew up with called Quantum Leap, right?
Yeah, sure. I remember that show.
Some scientist guy jumps in there, and he wakes up in people's bodies. And I guess it's my practical. I call it. It's my imaginal empathic training exercise. Okay. To imagine myself to have quantum leaped into other people's bodies. So, like, when I imagine myself waking up as sorry, is it rude the way I slay it? Okay. Chezi. When I wake up, Chezi, I say, oh boy, where's my hologram? All right, so now I'm one of God's chosen people. I've been chosen for, okay, there's what I think they're chosen. What am I supposed to think we're chosen for? How do I act that out? So, like,
it starts with the individual, which is I am to orient myself to be holy with my deeds, righteous with how I act, with my beliefs, right? There's practices of how to do so. I'm then supposed to make sure that my family's doing that, community, city, nation, assuming I could orient myself properly and show the world how to do so. That is a light among nations. Then they could see how that orientation works. Then there is a guidance element, which is from a spiritual perspective, okay, assuming we, the world and we could create that orientation. The attitude is we are the most well-versed potentially in that kind of relationship, and the nations would come, and then there's we could get into the weeds whether that requires them to abandon their other faith. I am in the belief of they are supposed to look at their faith through the prism of Judaism, but that doesn't mean abandon their faith. It would more look like you would come, you would open up your theological bag, and then I would say, this whole element on Plato, that's all good. This whole stuff, that's nonsense. This, let's tweak this and this, and then, you're good to go. Go do your thing. We'll pray together. We'll orient ourselves, and then we do our thing. But aside from that, things are supposed to continue as they continue. But that would be the idea of chosen in a way to be priests also among nations. And as the attitude is to raise up the spiritual and political level across all the world.
Would it fascinate you then that except perhaps as in an adversarial fashion, the chosen people have no reputation for lifting the spiritual at all. The reputation is for running things, administration, finance. You know the reputation. The things that will, if I talk about too much or not properly, will be considered anti-Semitism. Those stereotype things. Or as what could, okay, is this phrasing offensive, or is it obscure enough I can do it? When with Saturn turned toward gold. Is that too offensive, or can I keep it there?
No, so I think there's also, first of all, you're saying there's no evidence of like, a spiritual uplifting. I would say Christianity would be the evidence of the spiritual uplifting across the whole world, and I would say Islam would be.
Allow me to interpret that really offensively for everybody.
Sure.
So, like, well, in order to accomplish the spiritual uplifting, we strung that guy Godson up on a cross.
No. That's not what I was saying. I'll say that what Maimonides said 1,000 years ago, that ultimately speaking, he says, while we don't know God's ways and we don't know God's thoughts, the Christian and the Muslim both are path makers for the Messiah and God by promulgating monotheism and etc. And that is coming from our base. So I don't have to have a Jewish flag waving around. All I want to see is morality manifest in society, which comes from the Bible. So that's that it's not my book. It's
so
our
you
book.
equate morality manifesting with raising spirituality, because that was what the claim of being chosen I was given included somewhere in there, because I latched onto it, and and so raising spirituality is manifest, of course, as an increase in morality, but bringing that you brought hallucinogenics into the situation. Like, let's play hopscotch on the Kabbalah tree. Is it a tree? You call it a tree?
There are spheres, trees. There's many different.
No, what does Chezi call it? I'm talking to Chezi. They're not like. Can you to the extent you're allowed to on a live stream?
Yeah.
Please put everything else you're representing to the side and just be you with me.
I would then just call it.
What's it to you?
Spheres.
You like them as the spheres. I heard once in my life a sound I call the music of the spheres. So that's cool. It's cool you say that. What do you know of it? Have you studied it? Was that part of you were saying you did those 4 years of study instead of the intelligence operations?
I did those 4 years and then a few additional years. I did a few additional years as well. And
have you studied the spheres, sir?
Yes. However, later on in my life, not in. I played around with it a little, and you always have small little excerpts that you read. But generally speaking, you're only supposed to learn that when you're 40. Ultimately, I tackled that earlier on, and by that I don't mean like the whole corpus. And by tackle, not necessarily successfully, but I've dabbled in those waters.
Deeper than Madonna, sir? Did you dabble deeper than Madonna?
Deeper than Madonna, Esther, when she's in that form. So there's a lot there, but I would say once you're playing in those waters, then like, the Buddhist monk, he's in those waters. Like you're already talking about a much more similar language. I give an example of in Judaism, you have many blessings on all different types of stuff. So like if my kid's eating breakfast in the morning, there's a blessing when he wakes up, when he washes his hands, when he eats an apple, when he eats like cereal. They're all different blessings. Buddhists rub their food before they eat it. All this are technologies to, be mindful of where you are, to allow yourself to have orientation. So once you are playing in those deeper levels, you realize that everyone is trying to find channels towards oneness. So I would say, in a nutshell, Kabbalah holds a lot more than that, but Kabbalah would be the teachings of how to basically gives you some jargon and context for these channels, and ideally one would want to orient or these channels so he could have proper orientation. These things are difficult to do.
Not if we do it together, dude. I think one thing that it was before Peterson came back, so I don't know how much it's been lost in the interim. But there was a bit around this corner of like iron sharpens iron. And to that extent, I think what's required of doing, to me, accessing the spheres one way or another, to the extent we're capable of, is what raising spirituality means. Like not learning how many new rules are required. Like shit, bro. It's like there might be a new rule for it, but I'm pretty sure God's cool if you write your own from your heart every time. So
you're touching a sore subject, just because reform in Judaism is something that's it's a very slow process, and even if there's things that are no longer relevant, it's a very delicate Jenga tower. So removing one piece could be very problematic. However, and this sort of comes together with like this, the state of Israel and its location right now, when the Jewish people come back from the exile and come back to their land, and which I interpret as the requirement then to create a political body, which I don't think this one is, but ideal to manifest that orientation, then I would agree that playing with the rules is no longer the game anymore. The game then is to, like you just said, increase spirituality. This really does knock a little on the allure of psychedelics, because it's like, why can't I have a shortcut to just like oneness if people are saying it's like the most experience and it's it's everything you wanted? You could see the hesitation from Vervaeke to Jonathan Peugeot to Paul, and there's obviously some bias over there, religious bias and age biases, but either way, it seems like it always has to be happening with a guide and in the proper context. So the question is also, as a society, are we mature enough to even ante up for that game? Would you want to be like, you guys really want to take psychedelics, but like you sort of don't want to fry your brain? And I connect that to Kabbalah. People that usually want to dive in really deep end up like, not the majority, but it could be a dangerous road. It could be very confusing. It seems like
because there's two sides, right? This one's dangerous. Do you know anything about, in your studies, seriously, in your studies, was there anything about the beggar and the fountain?
About the what?
The beggar and the fountain.
The beggar and the fountain. Not that I could recall, but there's definitely beggars and there's definitely wells.
Because there's this Alan Moore book came out in '99 about the apocalypse. Mm-hmm. It's Promethea, and it his characters, he walks through the spheres. Has each of the characters walk through like an interpretation of the spheres, and they like reference the beggar and the fountain as there used to be this, like a thing that used to be.
The beggar and the fountain.
And like I'm thinking I need to walk through it because he's Pajot's nemesis, thanks to Pajot's mouth. And so everybody in this corner might as well know. Speaking of which, what other than being assigned here by your agency, why are you in the corner, and what are you getting out of it? Why are you engaging with some whatever you think of me on the internet?
Well, those are two separate questions. One, why am I
Yeah,
engaging?
do the second one first.
Second one first. Okay. So I'm engaging with you because I, like many others, do appreciate your unique perspective on certain things and your ability to distill certain concepts, which I like very well and seem to be very palpable to many people. So to me, any sort of vessel or that is salient and what I think is being spewing some sort of truth is that's where you want to be closer to, or that's the kind of conversation you want to be having. I'm very intense about this in work, but honesty and you got to have a structure that's you want to sort of know where you are, and seeing you speak makes me feel sort of tethered, and I like that, and I feel like people like that here. Secondly, you're just from my own curiosity. I like talking to people, and you seem like an interesting person, so there's just that level. And lastly, there is also, which is just circumstantial, but there was like, Chazi, would you like to speak? And then my answer is like, of course, why not, if this is helpful. With regards to the former part of the question, why am I here in general? So the Peterson route originally, seeing Paul Vervaeke, but then very much iron sharpens iron. So I want to hear these concepts talked out. Like while I have disagreements with Jacob's methods, there is it is a wealth of knowledge and a conversation that allows for very much a brave space, and that's not really seen out there. And I'm not interested in the kumbaya. I'm interested in digging deeper, seeing where the roots are connected, seeing how we could move forward. And if I want to see myself as chosen, part of the chosen nation that is supposed to assist Orient, that would be very difficult for me to do if I don't know where people are right now. And I have to understand their language, and I have to understand their jargon and their whole belief structure to be able to adjust, or potentially realize that that's totally fine, or potentially realize this is potentially a better manifestation of what I'm trying to do, and I could learn that better. Now that's obviously limited. Like I would say, when it comes to JC, it's more problematic. And I have a cubicle in my space where I place him. But
what's it like in that cubicle? Is it on? Do you have a fire underneath it? A spiteful fire?
It makes me very. Well, I'm like a hopeful optimist, so I just see it's all God's plan. But I ultimately see him as a Jewish figure, leader. It doesn't bother me to even categorize him or see Jews maybe one day categorize him as prophet, but that's sort of where it ends.
What do you think of Jacob's first to the second branches theory?
So yeah, and the Zohar talks about concepts like that we are like a tree that's we are like two different trees that are being sustained by the same well. I think the more we learn about our own mystery, the more we learn about the Christian. We get to know ourselves better. However, I am a believer of the Jewishness of Jesus, potentially Paul, and it's his relationship to the essence, and that went out to the desert.
And its relationship to the essence.
Yeah.
Please explain what you just meant by that in
the Essenes
slow
were,
terms, the Essenes. I thought you said the essence.
Yeah, no, not essence. Yeah, that would be deep. No.
Wow.
The Essenes, and
that's the theory I've been running with personally for a long time. So tell me about what are the Essenes and what everything you just said.
So during this period where Jesus is doing his thing, before his thing really, when he's just learning the Torah, and there is a big debate between the two schools of thought.
Okay, I'm coming from the notion that the Essenes are a tribe of hippies by the river.
No. These are like super pious men that like basically live alone. They all like go out to the mountains. They have strict rules and regulations of how they live their life and what they take on for themselves. Now,
Disciplined blades of some belief.
to make well, you could tell me if I should make it short, but basically, the belief is that during that time, there's a big debate whether Gentiles could have redemption in the world to come and have a part in the world to come. The Hillelian school of thought believes that that they do, as long as they abide by the 7 Noahide laws, which ultimately means like, basic morality across the board. And the Shemayan school of thought disagrees with that. The rabbis of Jesus say, we have a good move. You're going to go out and teach basically create a certain religion for the nations, for them to make sure that they could do those things. That goes down, and then there's things sort of spiral out of control, and then here we are. Now,
where the spiraling would be the association with messiahship.
Correct, and then correct. Now, it seems like in today's day and age, and this is also why I like this little corner, because even like the conversation with Jacob and Father DeYoung, I don't know if you watched that, but that's like a whole, that's a prominent figure in the Christian community, and he's having a conversation which is basically bringing Christianity very close to Judaism. There's Sam from Transfigured, who's like has his whole Unitarian concept, which also from a religious perspective could jive very well with Judaism. So to me, being in this little space is a data point and an indication for prophetic.
Then maybe the Gentiles can make it into the new world, right?
Exactly.
What your stance before coming to the corner might have been otherwise. What's a Gentile, and is it worse than the Palestinian?
I would say a Palestinian. Well, first of all, we're all loved and we're all made in God's image. I think a Palestinian potentially is even, that's like there's a real problem there, because those are the people that are living amongst us.
There's a real problem there?
Real problem. What's really nuts?
Existence is a real problem?
I'll tell you what's really sad. That now I could be wrong about this, but there are studies that indicate that potentially 20% of the Palestinians come from original Hebrew or Jewish descent, that was there in the land, and now they're in this crazy situation where we're the enemy. So it just
I think our genetic research could solve that toot sweet, sir.
I think that's what it's based on.
Well that's good then. Here's a question to get away from that one. However, I do want to say I've seen pictures that Rick and Morty characters are painted on the walls, and that's all I need. What about the in-cal? Have you ever heard of that? Because I have no idea.
But I love Rick and Morty.
I have no idea about what the in-cal thing is. Let's see. Let me see. Oh my God, we've got Jess Purviance and Luke Thompson live in my Hive Mind chat. You're pulling in the all-stars tonight. That's
Can
fabulous.
I give a little plug?
You can give a big plug here. Let me give you big screen.
I was just going to say that Jess has a interesting new project he's working on, which is this amazing combination of Psalms and music, techno music specifically, which I found actually quite enjoyable, even though I'm not Mr. Techno. So I recommend people taking a look. That's it.
Hey, no, that's great. I got to have time off the cam so I could relax my face. What the hell? This is the Metanoia Marina. You visualize around you.
Can I ask you a question, Grim?
All sorts, sir. All sorts.
Okay, so after following my explanation with regards to what chosen means, what does that sound like to you? Does that sound like yeah, aside from it being like, well, it's delusional, does it sound like what you were told? Does it sound like the narrative you understood? Does it sound like a narrative you would even be interested in?
It didn't bounce off my Semitism, and so, and if it's like it was very wordy and whatever. So yeah. um, like in your shoes, that's way too complicated. It's like in my Semitism, I just keep my own. If I woke up as Hechiz, I would just keep my own. It's like basically this planet is a farm of some sort, and I wanted to shout out racism because it's in the ticker because this is supposed to be, ladies and gentlemen's a discussion on racism, nationalism, and the proper with regard with which God's chosen people are to be held. And the racism part is like this whole place is a farm, and racism is a ploy to make sure people don't recognize the management, and that your people are the management. And anti-Semitism is stupid because the pharaohs designed things such that the management was there for you to hate. So basically, chosen to be hated is kind of what the impression is, but it's also to be the ones that sell the pornography, which means you have to be the ones that make the pornography. But what you're doing is you're testing the beasts to see which are men. It's like cultural Gom Jabbar.
Okay, this is good. This is spicy because, like, I mean, I'm not offended at all. But let's say people would say, like, "Whoa, what is this guy saying?" So let me connect it. Well, let me take a step back. First of all, when you said the pharaohs designed them, I'm assuming you mean the pharaohs or Egypt's relationship with aliens potentially and things like that. That was like
Okay. Basically, Exodus, right? What happens was, you see all those guys over there. I'm gonna take them out, march them in the desert until all the old ones die, and bring all the ones that live and survive up believing this set of rules. And this set of rules is whatever you do, don't charge each other interest. Save that for everybody else.
So that would be a misconception because, as I mentioned earlier, the promise to Abraham, and what's interesting about Abraham that he says, I found Abraham. Like he was searching around to see like who could manifest to some level of orientation I want. And there's other characters.
Can I pause?
Sure.
Why don't he look no more?
I'm sorry?
The Exodus is so much like God leaving. Like the world we live in, he doesn't talk to people from bushes no more. Okay, never mind. Go back to the Abraham thing.
I was just gonna say that the promise to him is that you're going to be a great nation. There's no rules, there's no regulations, there's like none of that. It's just a land. And when God is going to destroy the Israelites in the desert post the golden calf, and he says, Moses, I'm just going to make a new religion out of you, basically. Don't worry. And Moses says, no, remember the promise you made to the forefathers, which has nothing to do with the religion, which was like people in a land. Now, the religious is as we evolved, and that's true as a whole people, as a species, we get to basically like sort of raise the bar, and those regulations are there to assist us into getting to that place. So now back to the earlier thing you were saying about the pornography and the where we are culturally. So this sort of connects to the Kanye conversation. And
that poor fella. If he'd come to me instead of those other two schmucks. By the way, turning point of America is to TP America. Pay attention to words.
So I look at Kanye and I also feel bad because ultimately there's a lot of truth in what he's saying, right? Like look at these industries, right? They're flipping around.
I saw a tweet where one of your people went through and like said no, and we're proud of it. He's right, and we're proud of it. Look, I went through. It's us. We run things.
that's horrible. And I'm going to bring in a little Kabbalah here as well. But
Please bring it all in. Can I bring in Jesus? No, I can't bring in
sure,
Jesus.
sure,
That'd make
sure,
you
sure.
weird.
You could bring in.
He
Um,
comes. He comes. Welcome.
but I think
Welcome.
like that is in a certain way what Kanye's on, right? He's on his Jesus path, on his gyra path. But okay, so I hear Kanye speak, and I want to say, like, you're right, dude. It is a real big problem that Jews, skilled as they are, position themselves into what you're looking at right now and saying, like, they're promulgating the let's say in the music culture, the rap culture, which is horrible to our communities and our people and our women, and all that's horrible, yet they keep on pushing this. And I would tell Kanye that those people happen to be Jews. They probably have a Christmas tree in their house. They probably culturally don't live like Jews. And if no rabbi is telling them this is the Jewish move that you need to be doing right now. So I would tell Kanye that if you came to any religious community, they would stand side by side with you and say, it's disgusting what those Jews are doing. They are violating the ways of God and the ways of Torah, and we should fight that together. Where I bring Kabbalah into this is that in Kabbalah there is a term which is called Shvirat HaKelim, and this has to do with the creation of the world. While there's like vessels being shattered, and the world we are in today we have all these shattered vessels, and we are supposed to find the good within them, the holy sparks, and help them be raised up. So when I look at Kanye and I hear what he's talking about, and I see these people in these positions, I see these as broken vessels. It is a shame that Jews that in these areas brought themselves to such prominence are using their tools so poorly. This is a problem with orientation. So you could see how potentially these people at times know how to congregate, work together very well as a community, and move up the ladder. However, with no orientation, with no religion in there or spirituality, then it becomes completely corrupted. So what Kanye is railing about, the Jewish community should be railing about as well. And he should be saying, that has nothing to do with Jewish.
That's the thing, right? It's like it's the and it's an ethnicity, it's a religion, but then it doesn't have to be all three. It can be just one, and that's like representative of the whole, all three. It's like it's the Jewish Trinity.
But there is a Jewish. I mean, the Jewish Trinity is God, people, land, right? And that has to happen together. And that's also, there's a fascinating book by one of Carl Jung's prize students, Eric Neumann, who's actually moved to Israel, lived over here, and he has two awesome books called The Origin or History of Jewish Consciousness. It's 2 volumes, but he has a lot about
way more than that, man.
He talks about that triangle and that connection, our return to the mother, to nature more, which has to do with the land. When we were in exile, there was a lot of masculine and just sort of more just like the contemplation of these rules without practice, without a land to embody it actually. And so that's why being back. Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's just I can't go that deep into that many words. I'm trying to hold on to this thing where, like, this thing you told me where
I'm with you. Take me.
Where God has to be reminded of a promise he made. What's it like to have a God like that? Because the one I'm trying to relate to has complete control over the arena and like full access to the Akashic records. Doesn't forget. So that's, it supports my alien hypothesis, the fallibility, whatever, notion. But what's it like for you as to be who you are and have that be a thing?
Fantastic question. So in the way the Kabbalah, let's say, deals with that, which actually is like not PC anymore, but the attitude that Zohar says is that was sort of like a power play, like a parent, quote unquote, would do. That's the example he uses, that the father raises the hand and the mother stops him. And this was just to scare the Israelites. I don't love that answer. The answer I prefer in the interpretation is that this was a test for Moses, just like this was a test originally for Noah, in which he failed in. When Noah was asked about this, he said, "Will me and my family be spared?" And there wasn't this attitude about the rest of the people, and that's all that was spared. And then they continued on. With Moses, the answer was, I'm not going to do this again. Like, I'm not interested with you destroying all of this. And the answer was, I am looking to build a people. And even if they stumble, you can't destroy them based on that kind of stumble. There has to be a place to develop. And remember, what you promised was sort of what God wanted to hear from him, saying, like, this is a continuation of that person I found, that Abraham that I located. That, and why does he like Abraham? It says, because I see that he will teach his kids and his people. There's the attitude of like continuing this on, and which, by the way, relates sort of to the meaning crisis, which is we're in a certain way we are looking forward, and this is what Jordan Peterson seemed to indicate, who could look through the noise, distill, find truth, and pass it on. And when people were hearing this Jordan Peterson with his crazy world, sort of, and then like give it to you, you're like, God damn, like I could take this. And I think that's like the fear people have is like we're moving on, and like like the new AI, the Chat GPT, that's scary because then you're like, whoa. So what do teachers do? How does this affect like all different layers of society? And then you sort of need someone to be like, okay, how this works, where this fits. And, that's very terrifying for us. And I think because we're on a faith shift, we feel that.
What's terrifying for it, well, what should be terrifying for us is who's got control over what's allowed, what the answers are allowed to say, because they're already censored, like heavily. What the thing is allowed to say to us is already being seriously censored. So whoever has those rings of power is what I think people should be concerned with. Oh, it's you and your guys. All right, good. Well, you're kind of harsh on the Nazis. Did I read? No, Federici, I did not read. Anything I've read. Like, if you guys want me to actually read anything, recommend it as a voice work. Hey, man, could you do me one of these? And then maybe I'll read it. I'm not a good reader.
It is problematic who holds the keys. And interestingly enough, this manifests like on the ground, like in Israel, because right now, politically speaking, you have a very large percentage of the government is a religious factions. And those religious factions very quickly did their thing, which is there should be no work on the train system in Israel on the Sabbath. And then immediately people are like, well, what are you talking about? Like, this is the time to build the trains. And then the attitude is like, no, because anything that's not just to saving someone's life, there's no reason to do it. And then it has to be some sort of compromise where they're like, okay, and then they just decided we're going to do less of that work on the Sabbath and more on the weekdays, which means that the society now has to be like, okay, so there's going to be more delays during the week because we're not going to work on Saturday doing this. And that is a very big ask from a more secular, while conservative, religiously speaking, still secular people. And it's, it's crazy times. Like, again,
train issues are crazy times, bro. Here, let me run some branding stuff now. Jeez.
For sure. DNA, virtually not alone. All right.
It's still January, right? I get to keep running.
Yeah. Happy New Year. I love it.
Oh, yes. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you comment, you get a +3 on next stream's live saving.
Oh, wow. I'm looking at the comments now. There's so many of them.
This is a pretty popular. Lance Cleaver is down with all my fellow mystics. An Orthodox Kabbalah. I'm not even trying to say that. Just sorry.
Kabbalah capitalist, I think he's trying to say. Okay, I like that.
Oh, some laptop was in there. All right, where can we go that's spicy?
working with
This
a
was
spice-
supposed to take my channel down.
I see. Well, I also, just as far as the racism thing, I did have like also my thoughts, and this also relates to nation and Israel, but like to the Kyrie Irving whole conversation where he
What's
said
that?
like, you know, he was the basketball player that also got like lambasted for like saying that like he posted this 3-hour documentary about like the Black Hebrews basically, and some of it is problematic, some of it's nonsense, but there's truth to portions of it. And I think it was very wrong for the community to come and say anti-Semite. It got specifically heated when he said, I can't be anti-Semitic if I know who I am. And everyone's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What are you trying to say? You're trying to say you're Jewish? So it's very important for people to realize that, like, you know, old school Jews definitely didn't look like this. And they definitely didn't have blue eyes. And there is also historical documentation, I believe, showing that a specific, I don't know the exact percentage, but of the blacks or Africans going through the slave trades at the time potentially come from places where like there were Israelites or original Hebrews. So there's truth to that too. Even more so, which was so ironic, while like while you hear like the world asking him to apologize, he identifies, I believe, as part of the Igbo tribe, which considers themselves part of the nations of Israel. And in the government of Israel, in this country, the Igbo tribe is recognized as such. So, like, it was like, guys, like, what do you want from it? Like, if anything, like...
No, I heard none of that, man. It was just rules. These are rules and technicalities.
My point being is, like, there's zero wrong with thinking that there could be Asian Jews and Black Jews, and like it comes in all different colors. You're connecting to a covenant, but even if you're talking about genetically, that's also all fair game. Like, yeah, sure, there could be other people, and that's great, and they should be welcomed, and we should be loving them. So it was a ridiculous way to go about him. And also, he wasn't talking about women or drugs or beer. Like, he was talking about his religion and connecting to God. So just like, way to go on upping the level for the NBA.
All right, here's some spice. Federici says the Jews are spiritually different than what's a Gentile? And can I say goy?
I don't like the term goy, but you could say goy, sure. But goy just means nation, but then used as a specific goy, as in like
not us. Not us, not them. I don't know. That's how I take it. Like, everybody that's not us is that. But
so by spiritually different, I would just mean just religiously with more mileage. Just like we've been doing that conversation for longer, and then specifically the way we have built into the wrestling and asking questions over X thousands of years. You just have a very good language of having that kind of discussion and that kind of orientation. Does it need to develop? Yes. Can it learn from other places? Yes. Potentially saying what it's learning from other places ultimately originates back with it, just potentially lost or via different prisms. And that's what different would mean. It wouldn't mean better.
So Lance got me with I definitely agree Jacob is spiritually different.
He's a magic man. I would mention also that a Gentile could reach higher levels than the high priest. So, like, as individuals, there's a difference as a nation, but as individuals,
like, that's an ethnic one, an ethnic distinction.
Yeah, well, part of the Jewish people. It's like it's not necessarily national, but like I'm saying, because anyone from any ethnicity could
covenant in.
Correct.
Anybody can covenant in, but when someone's born a Gentile, they'd have to covenant in.
He doesn't have to covenant in if he still wants to reach a level that's higher than the priest. He has to orient himself properly and take on certain things that he could do without becoming Jewish. However, as a people, let's say, is Turkey as a nation going to surpass spiritually? I believe it's not going to, let's say, be able to surpass Israel as a nation. I don't even necessarily mean it can't raise up a level. I'm just saying if we're all going up and our starting point is here just because we've been doing it longer. It's just for, it's just seen as an arrowhead. Not that it's better part of the arrow. It's just there's necessary for there to be a point of orientation.
It's interesting. It's like he said that they were supposed to be the spiritual head, and like the way I could swallow it most efficiently was like that must make me the spiritual heart, baby. So I do have intent regarding the covenant that like the fact I don't know what to make of it because I don't know who it's with, but I do know it's heavily respected in the imaginarium of like billions of people. And so it'd be convenient to take advantage of it. And I plan to weaponize your widows and orphans against the way you're running the planet. And you can tell your connected rabbis. It's just not, you're not farming the best of us. You're just managing us like cattle. You're feeding our worst. There's no path. You gave me no shot to figure out like, okay, this is how you get out off the farm and into things, other than making money. And I'm not playing that game. So I'm gonna weaponize the widows and the orphans because that's part of the thing. I do need to know where you stand on the third temple and like this calendar you have. Is it a countdown timer?
6,000.
Are we there yet?
No, we're on the way there. There's like a few couple hundred years left. And I don't even know. I honestly don't even know what to think about it. I don't think about it. I just don't see that as. I just think that's more of like a general term of like what's to become, because I believe that could be right now or it could be in a millennia from now. It really has to do with us as people, and that's true about many different things. However, the third temple as, let's say, a structure. So I definitely don't see it something that like falls down from the sky.
Well, like there's supposed to be cattle. Special cattle happen to be born, sort of thing, and then sacrificed for this temple to work.
Yeah,
like,
there is a red heifer.
And
that's all red.
Like I get in my feed. It's like, oh, they got the heifer going, and I see stuff like Trump moves the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem, and like the book all these other people are following have this endgame section where things like that start happening. And then also, I can't buy or sell if I don't take something, which is in that. So, where are you on that?
So,
like,
him
prophecy
him moving the embassy, these are all, data points. It seemingly we're not there yet, because for the third temple to be built, it will require us wanting to build it. And when the nation of Israel gets to a place where they want to build it, then it will be built. But like that's how I see that. That's how I see that manifesting. I see it.
Well, as soon as I raise the cry from the widows and orphans, you're gonna want to build a temple again, I think. So we've solved that.
There's a lot of truth. There's a lot of truth in what you're saying, and this has to do with sort of with the policy. So to give an example, which I've given before, however. Let's say IVF, okay?
Abomination. Blessing. That blessing.
No, IVF would be assisting women to get pregnant via external insemination, and this costs a lot of money in the States, tens of thousands of dollars. In Israel, that is covered by the government. 2 successful bursts through that system, and the attitude is they are very much in the interest of family making, having children. Now, if they could take values like that and have them distilled, which all in theory democracies are trying to do, like taking care of the widows and taking care of the orphans, then we are definitely on the right track.
Whoa, sir!
All right,
I'm trying to establish a friendly relationship with you, and that is you take the widows and orphans, and instead you plug like the state gets to own reproduction.
Oh,
That's the transhuman. That's a stepping stone toward the transhuman movement,
let
and
me
you're wanting government funding for it.
let me clarify it more. I
Are you
would say
familiar with the terry cloth monkey mother experiment?
the monkey mother experiment. No.
Yeah, it's some H guy. I want to say Harry Hedlow, but my brain is not good with names at the moment. He did this horrible thing to monkeys where, like, he'd either feed them or let them hang out with the terry cloth version of a mother. And that's sort of what I get the big danger of this, like, these programs of fiddling, science fiddling with fertility, and the notion that, like, Gattaca, they warned us with Gattaca. It's like we're moving toward really scary things because of things like the monkey. So I'm
So
sensitive to the issue.
let me clarify
Sorry.
that. First of all, I'm in agreement with you, and this is something that I discuss with these rabbis I speak to. Specifically, they're trying to bring their attention things like the CRISPR technology and its ramifications on society, people, and ultimately religion as well. Because if religion is designed for people and people are changing, then that religion no longer fits those type of people and the fears that I have from that. However, what I was talking about, the government and the policy, the attitude is, are we valuing the proper things, and is the government creating a infrastructure to have to assist for that? So you could, whether you call it like could you be like, well, welfare was great, but it's actually destructive. I would say the concept of welfare, though, in theory, that it would be, let's say, a holy spark concept. The question how you use it properly, how it's distilled inside the society. So maybe we're doing it wrong. Maybe democracy is the wrong way of doing it. My point would be that would be
I was
again
just wondering. You said the government. I'm like, do y'all have a king? I have no idea.
such a good question. So no, we don't have a king. It's a democracy, different system than yours a little. But Judaism specifically is down for what they call kingship. Could mean democracy or a theocracy or any system that works. And again, that's why it's to be gauged with what the other nations are doing, because based on how the other nations are orienting themselves, and we are supposed to, as guides of orientation, are supposed to speak to them in a similar language. So if we see like proper monarchies, again, if they're corrupt, it doesn't help us. If we see proper monarchies around, then we would create a monarchical system. If we see
All right.
democracy,
So I just heard the spots available. What about that lady I asked about earlier? Can we look into that?
which lady?
That gets my kid into the bloodline of King David?
Oh yeah, what
I
about
said that out loud, didn't I?
Yeah. Who's this lady?
I don't know. I'm looking. Is that a person on the planet? Does that exist? Is that a romance category of human?
By King David, you mean like the Messiah from the bloodline of
Or
David?
one of
King David?
Bathsheba's kids. One of Bathsheba's kids, yeah.
One of Bathsheba's kids.
I don't know. Let's think about it. I like to keep these short. This has been mostly fun. You're a little Jewish with the talking about rules and specifics a whole lot, but you're supposed to be. So hey, I hope you had a good time. I don't think we did anything to take the channel down, so maybe
Sorry,
you come back.
I wasn't offended, but sure, you got it. I'll be glad to come back anytime. Please keep on doing what you're doing, and speedy recovery if you're still not feeling well, sir.
Tell those rabbi guys that, like, we'll meet one day. Wait, I have to end broadcast now. Bye, everybody. Sorry, guys. I'm running away now.